The night air was cool as Dr. Amara Chen drove her midnight blue Bentley Continental through the quiet streets of Riverside Heights. The dashboard clock showed 9:47 p.m. She had just left a long city council meeting where she presented her plans for police reform. The meeting had gone well, but she felt tired. All she wanted now was to get home, take off her heels and relax with a cup of tea. The streets were mostly empty at this hour. Expensive houses lined both sides of the road, their windows glowing with warm light. Amara had lived in this city for 15 years. She knew these streets well. She drove carefully, always following the speed limit. Years of experience had taught her to be extra cautious when driving her luxury car. She knew what could happen. In her rearview mirror, Amara noticed headlights approaching fast. A police car. She kept driving normally. She had done nothing wrong. But her heart beat a little faster. This was not the first time a police car had followed her in this neighborhood. The red and blue lights suddenly flashed on. The siren gave a short burst. Amara felt her stomach tighten. She took a deep breath and pulled over to the side of Oak Street, near its intersection with Riverside Drive. She put the car in park and turned on the interior light. Then she placed both hands on the steering wheel where they could be clearly seen. Through her side mirror, she watched the officer step out of his patrol car. He was a white man, tall and broad-shouldered, probably in his early 40s. He walked toward her car with slow, deliberate steps. His right hand rested near his weapon. His face was hard and suspicious. Amara rolled down her window. The cool night air rushed in. "Evening, officer," she said calmly. "May I ask why you pulled me over?" The officer leaned down to look inside her car. His eyes scanned the interior, then focused on her face. His name tag read Hutchins. "License and registration," Officer Hutchins said. His tone was cold and commanding. He did not answer her question. "Of course," Amara replied. She moved slowly and carefully. "I'm reaching for my purse now. It's on the passenger seat." She retrieved her designer handbag and took out her wallet. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. She had been through situations like this before. She knew how quickly things could go wrong. Officer Hutchins took her documents and examined them with narrowed eyes. He looked at her license for a long time, then looked at her face, then back at the license. "This your car?" he asked. "Yes, it is," Amara answered. "You sure about that?" His voice carried clear doubt. "I'm certain. It's registered in my name. You have the registration in your hand." Hutchins studied the registration paper. His jaw clenched. "How does someone like you afford a car like this?" Amara felt a familiar anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice even. "I work hard for my living, officer. Is there a specific traffic violation you stopped me for?" "I'm asking the questions here," Hutchins snapped. "Where are you coming from at this hour?" "I was at a city council meeting downtown. I'm heading home." "City council meeting?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What were you doing there?" "I work with the city. I had a presentation to give." Hutchins looked at her expensive car again, then at her professional clothing. His suspicion did not fade. If anything, it seemed to grow stronger. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. "Am I being detained? Have I committed a traffic violation?" "I said step out of the vehicle." His hand moved closer to his weapon. Amara's heart pounded, but she remained calm. "Officer, I have a right to know why I'm being stopped. I've been cooperative. I've provided my documents. Please tell me what law I've broken." "You're being defensive. That tells me you're hiding something." Hutchins moved his hand to his radio. "I'm calling for backup, and I want to search this vehicle." "You don't have my consent to search my car," Amara said firmly but politely. "Refusing a search? Now I know something's wrong here." Hutchins spoke into his radio, requesting backup and giving his location. Amara slowly reached for her phone, keeping her movements visible. "I'm going to record this interaction for my protection." "Put that phone down," Hutchins barked. "I have a legal right to record this, officer. I'm not interfering with your duties. I'm simply documenting what's happening." She started recording, holding the phone so the camera could see both of them. Her voice was calm as she spoke into the camera. "My name is Dr. Amara Chen. It's Tuesday, September 17th, approximately 10 p.m. I've been pulled over on Oak Street in Riverside Heights by Officer Hutchins. I have not been told why I was stopped. I have provided my license and registration. The officer has asked to search my vehicle without probable cause, and I have refused." Hutchins's face turned red. "You think you're smart? You think recording this changes anything?" I've dealt with people like you before. People like me? Amara asked quietly. Yeah, people who think they're above the law. People who drive cars they can't afford. Cars that probably aren't theirs. The car is mine, officer. The registration proves that. Registration can be faked. IDs can be stolen. Hutchins walked around her car, shining his flashlight through the windows. What else you got in here? Drugs, stolen goods. Amara took another deep breath. She had been pulled over 7 times in the past 5 years while driving this car. 7 times in nice neighborhoods. 7 times when she had broken no laws. But tonight felt different. This officer seemed more aggressive, more determined to find something wrong. In the distance, she heard another siren approaching. The backup Hutchins had called for was coming. People started coming out of nearby houses. An elderly white couple stood on their front lawn watching. A young man with his phone out filmed from across the street. A woman walking her dog stopped and stared. Amara felt humiliated. Here she was, a respected doctor and public official, being treated like a criminal in front of strangers. But she also felt something else. A cold, clear determination. This would not just be another story she shared with friends over dinner. This would not be another incident she tried to forget. The backup patrol car arrived. A younger female officer stepped out. She was Hispanic, probably in her late 20s. Her name tag read Martinez. She approached Hutchins with a questioning look. What's the situation? Martinez asked. Suspicious vehicle, Hutchins said. Drivers being uncooperative. Refusing a search. I think there's something illegal going on here. Martinez looked at Amara, then at the Bentley, then back at Hutchins. Something in her expression suggested she was not entirely convinced. Has she been informed of why she was stopped? Martinez asked. I don't need to explain my traffic stops to anyone, Hutchins replied sharply. I've got 15 years on the force. I know when something doesn't look right. Martinez walked over to Amara's window. Her approach was less aggressive than Hutchins's. Ma'am, can you tell me what happened? I was driving home from a city council meeting, Amara explained calmly. Officer Hutchins pulled me over. He has not told me why. He asked how I could afford my car, where I was coming from, and demanded to search my vehicle. I've been cooperative, but I exercised my right to refuse the search. Martinez nodded slowly. She looked at Hutchins. Did you observe a traffic violation? I don't need to justify my stops to you, Hutchins said angrily. I'm the senior officer here. More neighbors had gathered. The crowd was growing. Phone cameras pointed at the scene from multiple angles. Amara continued recording. The situation was escalating, but she remained calm. She had handled emergency rooms full of trauma patients. She had presented to hostile city officials. She could handle this. What Officer Hutchins did not know was that this was not just any traffic stop. And she was not just any driver. Soon, very soon, he would understand exactly who he had pulled over tonight. Officer Hutchins walked back to his patrol car to run Amara's information through the system. Officer Martinez stood nearby, watching the growing crowd of neighbors. She felt uncomfortable. Something about this stop did not feel right. Martinez had been with the department for 4 years. She had worked with Hutchins several times before. She had seen him pull over expensive cars in nice neighborhoods. She had noticed a pattern, though she had never said anything about it out loud. Most of the drivers he stopped were black or Hispanic. Most owned luxury vehicles. Most stops ended with no ticket, no arrest, just questions and searches. Ma'am, how long have you lived in this area? Martinez asked Amara, trying to keep her voice neutral. I don't live in this immediate neighborhood, Amara replied, still recording on her phone. But I've lived in this city for 15 years. I'm very familiar with this area. What do you do for work? I'm a physician. I also work with the city government. Martinez noticed that Amara spoke clearly and confidently. There was no nervousness in her voice, no signs of guilt or fear. Just calm professionalism. This was not how guilty people acted. This was how innocent people who had been through this before acted. Hutchins returned from his car. His face showed frustration. The system had come back clean. No warrants, no criminal record, nothing suspicious at all. Get out of the car, Hutchins ordered again. Now. Officer, I haven't done anything wrong, Amara said. You still haven't told me why you pulled me over. Your taillight looks broken, Hutchins said quickly. Martinez frowned. She had walked around the car. Both taillights were working perfectly. She had seen them glowing red when Amara first pulled over. My taillight is fine, officer, Amara said calmly. Would you like to check again? Don't tell me how to do my job. Hutchins' voice grew louder. I'm ordering you to step out of the vehicle. If you refuse, I'll arrest you for obstruction. Martinez stepped closer. Officer Hutchins, maybe we should— Stay out of this, Martinez, Hutchins snapped. I'm handling it. But Martinez did not stay out of it. She walked to her patrol car and ran Amara's name through the system herself. She wanted to see the full report, not just the basic information Hutchins had checked. The screen loaded. Martinez read the first line. Then the second. Her eyes went wide. Her face lost color. She read it again to make sure she was not mistaken. Oh no, she whispered. The system showed much more than a driver's license check. It showed Dr. Amara Chen's full background. Her medical credentials, her position at Riverside Medical Center where she worked as a trauma surgeon, and most importantly, her recent appointment to a very powerful position. 3 weeks ago, the mayor had appointed Dr. Amara Chen as the commissioner of the Civilian Oversight Board for the city's police department. The news had been in all the papers. There had been a big ceremony. The police chief had been there. Martinez had even seen a memo about it in the break room. The Civilian Oversight Board was the department's worst nightmare for officers who broke the rules. The board had the power to investigate complaints against police officers. They could review body camera footage. They could interview witnesses. They could recommend discipline, including firing officers. And the commissioner was the head of the entire board. Martinez looked at Hutchins, who was still arguing with Amara. He had no idea who he was dealing with. She had to tell him. This could end his career. Hutchins, Martinez called out urgently. I need to talk to you. Right now? I'm busy, Hutchins shouted back. It's important. Very important. Something in Martinez's voice made Hutchins pause. He walked over to her patrol car, irritation clear on his face. What is it? Martinez showed him the computer screen. Read this. Hutchins looked at the screen. He read silently. His confident expression began to change. His eyes narrowed, then widened. The color drained from his face. That can't be right, he said. That has to be a different person. Same name. Look at the photo, Hutchins. Look at the birth date. It's her. Hutchins stared at the screen. The photo matched perfectly. The birth date matched the driver's license. Everything matched. No, he muttered. This is wrong. The system made a mistake. The system didn't make a mistake, Martinez said quietly. You did. Hutchins stood frozen for a moment. Then he walked back toward Amara's car. But his walk was different now. The aggressive confidence was gone. He moved more slowly, more carefully. Ma'am, I need to see additional identification, he said. His voice was less harsh than before, but he was still trying to sound authoritative. Why? Amara asked. You have my driver's license. You have my registration. What more do you need? I just want to verify something, please. Amara reached into her purse again. She pulled out a small leather wallet. Inside was her official city identification card. It had her photo, her full name, and her title printed clearly. Commissioner, Civilian Oversight Board. She handed it to Hutchins through the window. Hutchins took the card with shaking hands. He looked at it for a long time. His face went through several expressions. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally pure fear. You're Commissioner Chen, he said slowly. Yes, I am, Amara replied. I've been telling you that I work with the city. You didn't seem interested in listening. The crowd of neighbors had grown larger. More than 20 people now stood on lawns and sidewalks, watching and recording. Several cars had slowed down to see what was happening. This was no longer a quiet traffic stop. It was a public spectacle. Hutchins tried to compose himself. He handed back the identification card. I apologize for any inconvenience, Commissioner. This was just a routine traffic stop. Standard procedure, routine. Amara's voice remained calm, but there was steel in it now. You pulled me over without giving a reason. You questioned how I could afford my car. You accused me of theft and drug possession. You called for backup and tried to search my vehicle without probable cause. You threatened to arrest me. This was not routine, Officer Hutchins. I was just doing my job, Hutchins said quickly, making sure the neighborhood is safe. Do you pull over every expensive car you see in this neighborhood? Amara asked. Or just the ones driven by black people? That's not— This isn't about race, Hutchins stammered. Then what is it about? Amara asked. Tell me, officer. What traffic violation did I commit? What made you suspect I had stolen this car? What gave you probable cause to demand a search? Hutchins could not answer. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Martinez stood a few feet away, watching the scene unfold. She felt a mix of emotions. Relief that she had not actively participated in Hutchins's harassment. Anger that she had to work with officers like him. Fear about what would happen next. Another patrol car arrived. A sergeant stepped out. He was an older black man with gray hair and a stern face. His name was Sergeant Williams. He took one look at the scene and immediately sensed trouble. "What's going on here?" Williams asked, walking up to the group. Before Hutchins could speak, Amara spoke first. "Good evening, Sergeant Williams. I believe we met at the department meeting 3 weeks ago when I was introduced as the new commissioner of the Civilian Oversight Board." Williams stopped walking. He looked at Amara more closely. Recognition hit him like a truck. "Commissioner Chen," he said, his voice filled with horror. What happened here?" "Officer Hutchins pulled me over," Amara explained calmly. "He has not given me a reason for the stop. He questioned my right to own this car. He attempted to search my vehicle without consent or probable cause. He called me suspicious and uncooperative. The entire interaction has been recorded by myself and several witnesses." Williams turned to Hutchins. The sergeant's face showed barely controlled rage. "Is this true?" "I was just following procedure," Hutchins insisted. You thought what?" Williams interrupted. "You thought you'd pull over the commissioner of the Civilian Oversight Board and treat her like a criminal? Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "I didn't know who she was," Hutchins said desperately. "Would it have mattered if she wasn't the commissioner?" Williams asked. "Would it have been acceptable to treat any citizen this way without cause?" Hutchins had no answer. Amara stepped out of her car now. She stood tall in her professional clothes, her phone still recording. She looked at all 3 officers. "Officer Hutchins, I want you to know something," she said quietly. "I've been in my position for 3 weeks. In that time, I've been reviewing files, learning about the department, reading complaint records, and I've read yours." Hutchins's face went completely white. "You have 17 complaints in your file," Amara continued. 13 involved traffic stops of people of color in wealthy neighborhoods. Most of those stops resulted in no tickets and no arrests. Just harassment. Just questions about how they could afford their cars or their homes. Just searches that found nothing. The crowd listened in complete silence. Phone cameras recorded every word. "This isn't the first time you've done this, Officer Hutchins," Amara said. "But I'm going to make sure it's the last." The silence that followed Amara's words was heavy and uncomfortable. Officer Hutchins stood frozen, his face pale in the streetlight. Sergeant Williams looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. Officer Martinez kept her distance, watching everything carefully. "Commissioner Chen," Williams said slowly, "I deeply apologize for this incident. This does not represent the values of our department." Amara looked at the sergeant. She appreciated his attempt at damage control, but she was not interested in empty apologies right now. "Sergeant Williams, with respect, this incident absolutely represents a problem in your department," she said. "It may not represent everyone in the department, but it represents a pattern that has been allowed to continue for too long." Williams nodded. He knew she was right. "What would you like to do?" "I would like to go home," Amara said. "I would like to file a formal complaint, and I would like a full investigation into Officer Hutchins's conduct, both tonight and in his previous stops." "Of course, that will all happen," Williams assured her. "Officer Hutchins will be placed on administrative leave immediately, pending investigation." "No," Hutchins suddenly shouted. "This is ridiculous. I made an honest mistake. I didn't know who she was." "That's exactly the problem," Amara said, turning to face him directly. "You should treat every citizen with respect regardless of who they are. The color of someone's skin should not determine how you police them. The value of their car should not make you suspicious. I shouldn't have to be a commissioner for you to treat me with basic dignity." "I treat everyone the same," Hutchins protested. "I'm not racist. I have black friends." Stop talking," Williams ordered. "Hutchins, get in your patrol car. We'll discuss this at the station. This is unfair." Hutchins's voice grew desperate. "She's going to ruin my career over nothing. Over a simple traffic stop." "You ruined your own career," Martinez said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She stepped forward, her face serious. "I've been wanting to say something for a long time. I should have said it before tonight. Martinez, don't, Hutchins warned. But Martinez continued. I've worked with Officer Hutchins on several shifts. I've seen him pull over expensive cars in nice neighborhoods. I've seen him question drivers about where they got money for their cars. I've seen him search vehicles for no reason, and almost every time the driver was a person of color. That's not true, Hutchins said angrily. It is true, Martinez insisted. I kept quiet because I was new. Because I didn't want to cause problems, but I should have reported it. I should have said something. Williams turned to Martinez. Do you have specific incidents you can document? Yes, Sergeant. At least 6 stops I personally witnessed over the past 2 years. Amara felt a small sense of relief. At least one officer was willing to tell the truth. At least one officer saw the problem. Officer Martinez, I'll need your full statement, Williams said. Both about tonight and the previous incidents. I'll provide everything you need, Martinez replied. The crowd of neighbors continued to watch. Some had started to leave, satisfied that the situation was under control, but many remained, still recording, still witnessing. An elderly white woman walked up to Amara. She was the woman from the lawn of the nearest house. She looked to be in her 70s with white hair and kind eyes. Excuse me, dear, the woman said. I'm Margaret Peterson. I live right there. She pointed to the large house behind her. I saw everything. I recorded it on my phone. If you need witnesses, I'll gladly testify. Thank you, Mrs. Peterson, Amara said, genuinely touched. That's very kind of you. It's not kind. It's right, Mrs. Peterson said firmly. I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years. I've seen how some officers behave. It's shameful. You were clearly doing nothing wrong. That officer treated you terribly. Several other neighbors approached. A young black man in his 20s introduced himself as Marcus Johnson. I recorded the whole thing too, he said. I'll send it to whatever email you need. This was wrong. Completely wrong. A Hispanic couple, the Rodriguez family, came over next. We've been pulled over in this neighborhood before, Mr. Rodriguez said. Same kind of questions. Same accusations. We thought we were alone. You're not alone, Amara told them. This happens more often than people realize. But we're going to change that. More people came forward with similar stories. An Asian businessman who had been stopped 3 times in 2 years. A black woman who had been questioned while walking her dog in the neighborhood where she owned a home. A Middle Eastern doctor who had been asked for proof that he belonged in the area. Hutchins watched all of this with growing horror. His face showed he was beginning to understand the magnitude of his situation. This was not just one incident. This was not just one complaint. This was a pattern being exposed in public in real time with dozens of witnesses. Hutchins, in your car. Now Williams ordered again. This time Hutchins obeyed. He walked slowly to his patrol car. His shoulders slumped. He looked like a man who knew his career was over. Williams turned back to Amara. Commissioner, I want you to know that I personally will ensure this investigation is thorough and fair. I will review every complaint in Hutchins' file. I will interview witnesses. This will be handled properly. I appreciate that, Sergeant, Amara said, but I will also be conducting my own investigation through the Civilian Oversight Board. This is exactly what the board was created for. I understand. You have my full cooperation. Amara looked at her watch. It was nearly 11 o'clock. She had been detained for over an hour of her life wasted because an officer saw a black woman in an expensive car and assumed something must be wrong. Am I free to go? She asked. Yes, of course. Again, I'm very sorry about this. Amara got back into her Bentley. The leather seats felt familiar and comfortable. She took a deep breath, letting the tension flow out of her body. Her hands were shaking now. During the encounter, she had forced herself to stay calm. But now that it was over, the reality of what had happened hit her. She could have been arrested. She could have been hurt. If she had reacted with anger instead of calm professionalism, things could have ended very differently. She had seen the statistics. She knew how these encounters sometimes ended for people who looked like her. Before she drove away, she looked at the crowd of neighbors still gathered. Many of them waved at her. Some gave thumbs up. A few clapped. She pulled out into the street and continued her drive home. But her mind was racing. This incident would have consequences. It would make news. It would spark conversations. And it would be used as evidence for why the Civilian Oversight Board was necessary. When Amara finally reached her home 15 minutes later, she sat in her driveway for a long moment. Her house was dark. She lived alone. She had never married, focusing instead on her career. Sometimes she wondered if she had made the right choice. Nights like this, she felt very alone. But then she thought about the neighbors who had come forward. The witnesses who offered to testify. Officer Martinez, who finally spoke up. She was not really alone. There were good people out there. People who cared about justice. She went inside and made herself the cup of tea she had been looking forward to all evening. Her phone buzzed constantly. News travels fast in the digital age. Several people from the city council had already texted her, asking if she was okay. The mayor's office had called twice. Amara ignored the messages for now. She sat on her couch with her tea and allowed herself to feel everything she had suppressed during the encounter. The fear, the anger, the humiliation, the exhaustion. Tomorrow she would have to deal with the aftermath. Tomorrow she would have to file reports and give statements. Tomorrow she would have to face the media. Tomorrow she would have to be Commissioner Chen again. But tonight she was just Amara, just a woman who wanted to drive home in peace. Just a person who deserved to be treated with respect. She pulled out her phone and watched the video she had recorded. She watched Officer Hutchins approach her car with suspicion already on his face. She watched herself stay calm and polite. She watched the whole humiliating encounter play out. Then she saved the video to 3 different locations. She backed it up to the cloud. She sent copies to her personal email. This video was evidence. This video was proof. This video would help her make sure that what happened to her tonight would not happen to others. As she finished her tea and prepared for bed, Amara thought about the work ahead. The investigation would be difficult. Officer Hutchins would likely have support from the police union. Some people would defend him. Some would say she was overreacting. Some would question her motives, but she had been appointed to this position for a reason. The mayor knew the police department needed oversight. The community knew there were problems, and now she had first-hand experience of exactly what those problems looked like. She would use this experience. She would turn this painful encounter into meaningful change. Not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been pulled over for no reason. For everyone who had ever been questioned about belonging in their own neighborhood. For everyone who had ever been treated as suspicious simply because of how they looked. Officer Hutchins thought he was pulling over just another person he could intimidate. He had no idea he was pulling over the one person who had the power to change the entire system. Sometimes, Amara thought with a slight smile, karma works in mysterious ways. By morning, the videos had gone viral. Amara woke up to hundreds of notifications on her phone. Her encounter with Officer Hutchins was trending on social media. News websites had picked up the story. Her phone would not stop ringing. She made coffee and sat at her kitchen table scrolling through the responses online. Most people were supportive and angry on her behalf. They shared their own stories of being pulled over for no reason. They talked about racial profiling. They demanded justice, but some comments were negative. Some people defended Officer Hutchins. They said he was just doing his job. They said Amara was playing the race card. They said she should have been more cooperative. These comments did not surprise her. She had expected them. By 8 in the morning, 3 news vans were parked outside her house. Reporters stood on her lawn with cameras and microphones. Amara watched them from her window. She knew she had to make a statement. She had to control the narrative before someone else did it for her. She put on a professional navy blue suit. She did her hair and makeup carefully. Then she stepped outside to face the cameras. "Good morning," she said calmly. "I'll make a brief statement and then I'll take a few questions." The cameras focused on her. Microphones were pushed forward. "Last night I was pulled over by Officer Derek Hutchins while driving home from a city council meeting. I was not speeding. I had not broken any traffic laws. When I asked why I was stopped, Officer Hutchins did not provide a reason. Instead, he questioned how I could afford my car. He accused me of theft and drug possession. He attempted to search my vehicle without my consent and without probable cause. He threatened to arrest me for being uncooperative when I exercised my legal rights." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I'm not sharing this story because I want sympathy. I'm sharing it because it represents a much larger problem in our police department and in police departments across this country. I was treated this way because of the color of my skin. Officer Hutchins made assumptions about me based on my race. This is racial profiling and it's unacceptable. A reporter called out, "Commissioner Chen, are you calling for Officer Hutchins to be fired?" "I'm calling for a thorough investigation," Amara replied. "The investigation will determine appropriate consequences." "But I want to be clear. This is not just about one officer. This is about a pattern of behavior that has been allowed to continue. Officer Hutchins has 17 complaints in his file, 13 involving stops of people of color. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern." "Do you think the police department has a racism problem?" another reporter asked. "I think the police department has officers who do excellent work and serve the community well," Amara said carefully. "But I also think there are officers who engage in racial profiling, and the department has not done enough to address this behavior. That's why the Civilian Oversight Board exists. That's why I accepted this position." "Some people are saying you're using your position to target an officer who made an honest mistake," a different reporter said. Amara looked directly at the camera. "This was not an honest mistake. An honest mistake is pulling someone over for a broken taillight that you genuinely believed was broken. This was racial profiling. Officer Hutchins saw a black woman in an expensive car and immediately assumed something was wrong. He had no probable cause. He had no reason to stop me. The only thing suspicious was his own bias." "What happens next?" someone asked. "The Civilian Oversight Board will conduct a full investigation. We'll review Officer Hutchins's complaint history. We'll interview witnesses from last night and from previous incidents. We'll examine data on traffic stops to see if there's a pattern of racial disparity, and we'll make recommendations for both individual accountability and systemic change." "Are you worried this incident will affect your ability to work with the police department?" a reporter asked. "No," Amara said firmly. "If anything, this incident proves why civilian oversight is necessary. I now have first-hand experience of what many people in this community experience regularly. I understand the fear and frustration of being targeted for no reason. This will make me better at my job, not worse." She took a few more questions, then went back inside. She had more calls to make. The mayor wanted to meet with her. The police chief had requested a conversation. The city council wanted a briefing. At 10 o'clock, Amara met with her legal team. She had hired 3 attorneys to support the Civilian Oversight Board's work. They gathered in her office downtown, reviewing the video and planning their investigation strategy. "This is strong evidence," said Attorney Park, a Korean-American woman in her 40s. "The video clearly shows Hutchins had no probable cause. His questions about how you could afford the car are particularly damaging." "What about his claim that the taillight was broken?" Amara asked. "The video shows both taillights working perfectly," Attorney Washington, a black man in his 50s, replied. "He made that up after the fact to justify the stop. That's going to be a major problem for his defense." "We need to look at his other stops," said Attorney Lopez, a Hispanic woman in her 30s. "If we can show a pattern, it strengthens the case that this wasn't just bad judgment. It was systematic discrimination." They spent 2 hours reviewing files and planning their approach. Then Amara had her meeting with the police chief. Chief Raymond was a white man in his early 60s. He had been with the department for 35 years. He looked tired and stressed when Amara entered his office. "Commissioner Chen," he said, standing to shake her hand. "Thank you for meeting with me." "Of course, Chief." They sat across from each other. The chief's office was filled with photos and awards from his long career. Amara wondered how many of those achievements would be overshadowed by this scandal. "I want to apologize personally for what happened last night," Chief Raymond said. "That's not how we train our officers. That's not the standard we expect." "With respect, Chief, it may not be how you train your officers, but it is how some of your officers behave," Amara replied. "And if 17 complaints weren't enough to trigger action, then the standard you expect and the standard you enforce are 2 different things." Chief Raymond sighed. "You're right. I won't make excuses. We should have addressed Hutchins's behavior earlier. We failed. Why didn't you?" Amara asked directly. 13 complaints involving racial profiling. Why was he still on the street? "The union," the chief said. "Every time we tried to discipline him, the union fought it. They said the complaints were unsubstantiated. They said he was being targeted. They threatened legal action. So you backed down." "Yes, we backed down." The chief looked ashamed. "I'm not proud of it. But fighting the union is expensive and exhausting. And we usually lose. That's going to change," Amara said. "The Civilian Oversight Board has independent authority. The union can't stop our investigations. They can't block our recommendations. I know. And honestly, I'm grateful for that. I've wanted to clean house for years. Maybe now we finally can. Amara studied the chief's face. He seemed sincere. But she had learned not to trust easily. I need your full cooperation, she said. Complete access to Hutchins's files. Body camera footage from all his stops. Internal affairs reports, everything. You'll have it, Chief Raymond promised. I'll send over the files today. I also want data on traffic stops for the past 5 years, broken down by race, neighborhood, and outcome. That's going to show some ugly patterns, the chief warned. Good. That's exactly what we need to. See? They talked for another hour about the investigation, process, and the department's response. When Amara left the chief's office, she felt cautiously optimistic. At least he seemed willing to cooperate. Her next meeting was with the mayor. Mayor Johnson was a black woman in her mid-50s. She had been the one to appoint Amara to the commissioner position. They met at City Hall in the mayor's private office. Amara, are you okay? The mayor asked immediately, her voice filled with genuine concern. I'm fine, Madame Mayor, thank you. I'm so angry this happened to you. I appointed you to fix these problems, not to experience them yourself. In a way, experiencing it helps, Amara said. Now I truly understand what we're fighting against. The mayor nodded. What do you need from me? Support. This is going to get messy. The police union will push back. Some city council members will defend Hutchins. There will be pressure to let this go quietly. I won't let that happen, Mayor Johnson said firmly. I have your back completely. You have my full authority to investigate and recommend whatever actions you think are necessary. Even if it means firing popular officers? Even if it means facing lawsuits from the union? Even then. Amara, I didn't create the Civilian Oversight Board to make nice speeches and change nothing. I created it to actually hold the police accountable. You do what needs to be done. Amara felt relieved. Having the mayor's support would be crucial in the battles ahead. That afternoon, Amara held a press conference at City Hall. The room was packed with reporters, community activists, and concerned citizens. She stood at a podium with a poster board behind her showing statistics on racial disparities in traffic stops. I want to talk about more than just my experience last night, she began. I want to talk about the data. In the past 5 years, black drivers in this city were 3 times more likely to be pulled over than white drivers. Hispanic drivers were twice as likely. But here's the important part. Those stops were less likely to result in citations or arrests than stops of white drivers. She let that information sit for a moment. What does that tell us? It tells us that these stops are not about public safety. They're about suspicion based on race. Officers are pulling over people of color without real cause, searching for reasons to justify the stop after the fact. She clicked to another slide showing Officer Hutchins' specific data. Officer Hutchins' record is even more extreme. In 3 years, he conducted 47 traffic stops in wealthy neighborhoods. 42 of those stops involved people of color. Those 47 stops resulted in 0 arrests and only 3 traffic citations. In other words, he pulled over dozens of innocent people for no legitimate reason. The room erupted in angry murmurs. The Civilian Oversight Board hearing was scheduled for 3 months after the incident. In those 3 months, Amara and her team worked tirelessly. They reviewed hundreds of documents. They interviewed dozens of witnesses. They analyzed years of traffic stop data. What they found was even worse than Amara had expected. Officer Hutchins was not alone. The investigation revealed at least 6 other officers with similar patterns. They all worked in the same district. They all had multiple complaints. They all seemed to target people of color in wealthy neighborhoods. Amara sat in her office late one night reading through complaint after complaint. Each one told a similar story. A person of color driving a nice car, a traffic stop with no clear reason, questions about where they got money, demands to search the vehicle, threats and intimidation. One complaint was from Marcus Chen, a Korean-American software engineer. He had been pulled over while driving his Tesla. The officer asked if the car was stolen. Marcus showed his registration, but the officer still made him wait on the side of the road for 40 minutes while backup was called. No ticket was issued. No apology was given. Another complaint was from Jennifer Williams, a black attorney. She had been pulled over 3 times in 6 months, always in the same neighborhood where she had just bought a house. Each time officers questioned whether she really lived there. Each time she had to prove she belonged in her own neighborhood. A third complaint was from David Rodriguez, a Hispanic doctor. He had been stopped while leaving the hospital where he worked. The officer accused him of stealing the Mercedes he drove. Even after David showed his hospital ID and car registration, the officer searched his vehicle and kept him detained for over an hour. The stories went on and on. Dozens of professional law-abiding citizens treated like criminals because of their race. Amara's legal team also discovered something else troubling. Several officers had reported concerns about Hutchins' behavior to their supervisors over the years, but nothing had been done. The complaints were filed away and forgotten. The pattern was allowed to continue. Officer Martinez had been telling the truth. She had tried to report problems, but her concerns had been dismissed. She was told not to cause trouble. She was told that Hutchins was a good cop who was just being thorough. 2 months into the investigation, Amara received a threatening letter. It came in a plain envelope with no return address. The letter warned her to drop the investigation or face consequences. It called her racist against police. It accused her of having an agenda against law enforcement. Amara was not surprised. She knew there would be pushback. She reported the letter to the police and to her security team. Then she continued her work. The police union held a press conference defending Officer Hutchins. The union president, a white man named Tom Brady, stood at a podium and painted Hutchins as a victim. Officer Hutchins is a dedicated public servant with 15 years of excellent service, Brady said. He made a traffic stop. The driver happened to be Commissioner Chen. Now his career is being destroyed because of political correctness and a rush to judgment. What about the pattern of complaints? A reporter asked. All those complaints were investigated and found to be unsubstantiated, Brady claimed. People make false complaints against police all the time, sometimes because they're angry about getting a ticket, sometimes because they have an agenda. We can't ruin an officer's career based on unproven accusations. Amara watched the press conference from her office. She was not angry. She was determined. The union's defense of Hutchins only proved how deep the problem went. Other victims started coming forward publicly. Marcus Chen, the software engineer, did a television interview. He showed the video he had recorded of his traffic stop. His hand shook as he described the fear he felt when the officer approached his car with a hand on his weapon. I did everything right, Marcus said to the camera. I was polite. I followed all instructions. But I was still treated like a criminal. The officer looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong in a nice car. That's wrong. That's racial profiling. Jennifer Williams, the attorney, wrote an article for the local newspaper. In it, she described the humiliation of being stopped repeatedly in her own neighborhood. She talked about the looks from her white neighbors who witnessed the stops. She talked about feeling like she had to prove she deserved to live where she lived. I work hard, she wrote. I earned everything I have. But in the eyes of some police officers, none of that matters. All they see is my black skin and they assume I must be up to something. That has to change. Community activists organized protests. Hundreds of people marched to City Hall demanding police reform. They carried signs reading, "Stop racial profiling" and "Black Lives Matter" and "Justice for All." The protests were peaceful but loud. The community wanted change. Some city council members supported Amara's investigation. Councilwoman Park, who represented a diverse district, gave a passionate speech at a council meeting. We cannot allow this behavior to continue, she said. We cannot let officers target people based on race. We cannot ignore complaint after complaint, because it's easier than confronting the problem. Commissioner Chen's experience was not unique. It happens every day. We owe it to our citizens to fix this. But other council members were less supportive. Councilman Brown, who represented a mostly white suburban district, questioned whether the investigation was fair. We're rushing to judgment, he argued. We're destroying an officer's career based on one incident. Maybe Commissioner Chen is too personally involved to be objective. Maybe we should have an independent investigation. The Civilian Oversight Board is independent, Councilwoman Park shot back. That's literally the point of having civilian oversight. And this isn't about one incident. It's about a documented pattern over years. The debate in the city council reflected the debate in the community. Some people understood the problem and wanted change. Others felt defensive and thought police were being unfairly attacked. Meanwhile, Officer Hutchins remained on administrative leave with pay. He gave one interview to a conservative news outlet where he presented himself as a victim of political correctness. I was just doing my job, he said. I saw a suspicious situation and I investigated. That's what police do. Now I'm being called racist. My career is over. My family is suffering. All because I pulled over someone who happened to be powerful. The interviewer did not ask about the pattern of complaints. They did not mention the data showing racial disparities in his stops. It was a softball interview designed to make Hutchins look sympathetic. Amara did not respond directly to Hutchins's interview. She let the evidence speak for itself, and the evidence was overwhelming. Her team compiled a comprehensive report. It was over 200 pages long. It documented every complaint against Hutchins. It included video evidence when available. It showed statistical analysis of his traffic stops compared to other officers. It included witness testimony from victims and from officers who had tried to report concerns. The report also examined the department's failure to act on complaints. It showed how supervisors had dismissed concerns. It revealed how the union had protected problematic officers. It demonstrated systemic failures at multiple levels. 2 weeks before the hearing, Officer Martinez reached out to Amara privately. They met at a coffee shop away from the police station. "Thank you for meeting with me," Martinez said nervously. "I know this is probably not appropriate." "It's fine," Amara assured her. "What did you want to talk about?" "I want to testify at the hearing. I want to tell everything I know, not just about Hutchins, but about the culture in the department, about how officers who speak up get punished, about how complaints get buried." "Are you sure?" Amara asked. "This could affect your career." "I know, but I can't stay silent anymore. What happened to you could have been prevented if people like me had spoken up sooner. I need to do the right thing now." Amara felt respect for Martinez's courage. "Thank you. Your testimony will be important." Martinez nodded. "There's something else you should know. Hutchins isn't planning to defend himself. The union lawyers think the evidence is too strong. They're going to argue for a lesser punishment instead of fighting the charges." This was significant news. If even Hutchins's own lawyers thought he could not win, the case was solid. "What are they asking for?" Amara asked. "Suspension without pay for 6 months. Mandatory training. Return to duty with probation." Amara shook her head. "That's not enough. The pattern is too clear. The behavior is too serious." "I agree," Martinez said. "But the union is powerful. They might force a compromise. We'll see," Amara said. "The Civilian Oversight Board has authority to recommend termination. Whether the police chief accepts that recommendation is up to him." As the hearing date approached, Amara felt both nervous and confident. Nervous because this would be her first major case as commissioner. Confident because the evidence was overwhelming. The night before the hearing, Amara could not sleep. She kept thinking about all the people who had experienced what she experienced, all the victims who had no power to fight back, all the complaints that had been ignored. This hearing was not just about Officer Hutchins. It was about whether the system could change. It was about whether civilian oversight could actually work. It was about whether people of color could get justice when police violated their rights. Amara got out of bed and reviewed her presentation one more time. She looked at the statistics. She read the complaints. She watched the videos. Everything was ready. Tomorrow the real work would begin. Tomorrow Officer Hutchins would face consequences for his actions. Tomorrow, the community would see whether the promise of police accountability was real or just empty words. Amara finally fell asleep at 3 a.m. She dreamed of driving through quiet streets without fear. She dreamed of a world where the color of someone's skin did not determine how police treated them. She dreamed of justice. When her alarm rang at 6, she woke up ready. Today was the day. Today, change would begin. The hearing room at City Hall was packed. Every seat was filled. People stood along the walls. News cameras lined the back of the room. This was not just another administrative hearing. This was a moment that would define the future of police accountability in the city. Amara sat at a long table at the front of the room with her legal team. The 5 members of the Civilian Oversight Board sat at an elevated platform, like judges in a courtroom. Officer Hutchins sat at another table with 3 lawyers from the police union. He wore his dress uniform. He looked nervous but tried to appear confident. Chief Raymond sat in the front row with several senior police officials. Mayor Johnson was there too. Community activists filled many of the other seats. The victims who had filed complaints were present. This was their day as much as Amara's. The chairperson of the oversight board, a retired judge named Maria Santos, called the hearing to order. She was a Hispanic woman in her 60s with gray hair and a commanding presence. "We are here today to review the conduct of Officer Derek Hutchins," Judge Santos began. "Commissioner Chen has filed a complaint and conducted an investigation. We will hear evidence from both sides. This board will then make recommendations regarding discipline. Let's begin." Amara stood and approached the podium. She had prepared her presentation carefully. She would start with her own experience, then expand to show the pattern. "Members of the board, thank you for your time today," she began. Her voice was clear and strong. "On the evening of September 17th, I was pulled over by Officer Hutchins. I had committed no traffic violation. I had broken no laws. But I was detained for over an hour, questioned aggressively, and treated like a criminal suspect. Why? Because Officer Hutchins saw a black woman in an expensive car and assumed something must be wrong." She clicked to show video from that night. The board members watched in silence as Hutchins questioned how she could afford her car, demanded to search her vehicle, and called for backup. "This video speaks for itself," Amara continued. "But this was not an isolated incident. This was part of a pattern that has continued for years." She presented the data next. Charts showing Hutchins's traffic stops broken down by race, graphs comparing his stops to other officers, statistics showing how rarely his stops resulted in citations or arrests. In 3 years, Officer Hutchins conducted 47 traffic stops in wealthy neighborhoods, Amara explained. 42 involve people of color. That's 89%, in a city where people of color make up 35% of the population. These numbers don't lie. This is racial profiling. One of the board members, a white man named Robert Miller, raised his hand. "Commissioner Chen, couldn't these numbers be explained by crime patterns?" "Perhaps there was more suspicious activity in certain areas." "That's a fair question," Amara responded. "But the data shows that these stops produced almost no evidence of crime. 3 traffic citations and 47 stops. 0 arrests. If Officer Hutchins was responding to actual criminal activity, we would see different outcomes." She then called her first witness. Marcus Chen, the software engineer, took the stand. He described his traffic stop in detail. His voice shook as he talked about the officer's hand near his weapon. He explained how he had to prove his car was not stolen even after showing registration. "I felt like I was guilty of something," Marcus said, "but my only crime was being Asian and driving a Tesla." Next came Jennifer Williams, the attorney. She testified about being stopped 3 times in her own neighborhood. She described the looks from neighbors, the embarrassment of having to prove she belonged there. "I'm an attorney," she said with emotion in her voice. "I know my rights. I know the law. But in those moments, none of that mattered. I was just another black person who the police assumed didn't belong." David Rodriguez, the doctor, testified next. He described being accused of stealing his own car. He talked about being searched in front of his colleagues leaving the hospital. "I save lives for a living," he said. "But that officer looked at me and saw a criminal. That's wrong. That has to change." One after another, victims testified. By lunchtime, the pattern was undeniable. Every story was similar. Every victim was a person of color. Every stop was based on assumptions and bias rather than evidence. After lunch, Officer Martinez testified. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. A police officer speaking against another police officer. The room was completely silent as she took her oath. "Officer Martinez, how long have you worked with the department?" Attorney Park asked. 4 years. "And how many shifts did you work with Officer Hutchins?" "Approximately 30 shifts over 2 years. What did you observe during those shifts?" Martinez took a deep breath. "I observed Officer Hutchins pulling over expensive cars in wealthy neighborhoods. He seemed to focus on cars driven by people of color. He would question them about where they got money for their cars. He would search vehicles even when the drivers refused consent. He treated innocent people like suspects. Did you report these concerns?" "Yes. I reported them to my sergeant after the first few incidents I witnessed. I was told that Hutchins was experienced and knew what he was doing. I was told not to question senior officers. What happened when you persisted? I was warned that I was causing problems. I was told that officers need to support each other. The message was clear. Stay quiet or face consequences. Did those experiences affect your decision to testify today?" "Yes, I stayed quiet too long. I should have done more. What happened to Commissioner Chen could have been prevented if people like me had spoken up sooner. I won't make that mistake again. The union lawyers tried to discredit Martinez during cross-examination. They suggested she was motivated by ambition. They implied she was trying to get promoted by attacking a senior officer. But Martinez remained calm and consistent. Her testimony was powerful because it was honest. The afternoon session focused on the department's failures. Amara presented evidence showing how complaints against Hutchins had been dismissed. She showed emails from supervisors telling officers not to file reports. She revealed how the union had threatened legal action every time the department tried to discipline Hutchins. This is not just about one officer, Amara told the board. This is about a system that protected him. A system that ignored complaint after complaint. A system that chose to avoid conflict rather than protect citizens. Finally, it was the union's turn to present their defense. The lead attorney, a man named Richard Foster, stood at the podium. He looked confident despite the overwhelming evidence against his client. Members of the board, Officer Hutchins is not a racist. Foster began. He is a dedicated public servant who has served this city for 15 years. Did he make mistakes? Perhaps. But mistakes are not crimes. Poor judgment is not racism. Foster argued that the complaints against Hutchins were exaggerated. He said that people who get pulled over are often angry and file false complaints. He claimed that the statistics were misleading because they did not account for all the factors involved in policing decisions. Officer Hutchins should not lose his career over this, Foster concluded. The union recommends a 6-month suspension without pay and mandatory training. This would address any concerns while preserving the career of a valuable officer. Amara wanted to jump up and object. 6-month suspension for years of racial profiling? For dozens of victims? For systematic violation of citizens' rights? But she remained calm. She would have a chance to respond. When Foster finished, Judge Santos called for closing statements. Amara approached the podium one last time. Members of the board, you have seen the evidence, she said. You have heard from the victims. You have seen the data. The pattern is clear. Officer Hutchins engaged in racial profiling for years. He violated the rights of dozens of citizens. He treated people of color as suspects based solely on their race. She paused and looked at each board member. The union wants you to believe this is about mistakes and poor judgment. But this was not a mistake. This was a choice. Officer Hutchins chose to pull over people of color. He chose to question their right to own nice cars. He chose to ignore their civil rights. And when complaints were filed, he faced no consequences. That enabled him to continue his behavior. Amara's voice grew stronger. If this board recommends only a suspension, you send a message. You tell officers that racial profiling will be tolerated. You tell victims that their complaints don't matter. You tell the community that nothing will change. But if you recommend termination, you send a different message. You say that racial profiling will not be accepted. You say that officers who violate rights will lose their jobs. You say that the community deserves better. She looked directly at Judge Santos. I ask this board to recommend Officer Hutchins be terminated, not because of one incident, not because of my experience, but because of a documented pattern of misconduct that spanned years and harmed dozens of innocent people. Justice requires accountability. Change requires consequences. Thank you. The board members deliberated for 2 hours. The waiting was difficult. Amara sat with her legal team trying to stay calm. Around her, people talked in hushed voices. Everyone wondered what the decision would be. Finally, Judge Santos and the other board members returned. The room fell completely silent. After careful review of all evidence and testimony, this board has reached a decision, Judge Santos announced. We find that Officer Derek Hutchins engaged in a pattern of racial profiling that violated the civil rights of numerous citizens. We find that his conduct on September 17th was not an isolated incident, but part of systematic discrimination. We find that previous complaints against Officer Hutchins were not properly investigated or addressed by the department. She paused. Hutchins sat frozen in his seat. Therefore, this board unanimously recommends that Officer Derek Hutchins be terminated from the police department effective immediately. We further recommend that he be prohibited from employment in any law enforcement position in this jurisdiction. The room erupted. Some people cheered. Others gasped. Hutchins put his head in his hands. The union lawyers immediately began preparing appeals, but Judge Santos was not finished. This board also makes the following additional recommendations. First, all officers must wear body cameras during traffic stops. Second, the department must implement an early warning system to identify officers with patterns of complaints. Third, traffic stop data must be analyzed quarterly for racial disparities. Fourth, any officer with multiple similar complaints must face immediate review. Fifth, supervisors who fail to properly investigate complaints must themselves face discipline. These were exactly the reforms Amara had proposed. The board was not just dealing with one officer. They were demanding systemic change. Chief Raymond stood up. The department accepts the board's recommendations. Officer Hutchins will be terminated. The reforms will be implemented within 90 days. Mayor Johnson also stood. This city supports the Civilian Oversight Board completely. We will provide all necessary resources to implement these reforms. After the hearing, Amara was surrounded by reporters and supporters. People thanked her. People hugged her. People cried tears of relief and joy. Marcus Chen shook her hand. Thank you for not letting this go. Thank you for fighting for all of us. Jennifer Williams embraced her. You gave us hope. You showed us the system can work. Officer Martinez approached nervously. Commissioner, I just wanted to say thank you for giving me the courage to do the right thing. Thank you for speaking up, Amara replied. Officers like you give me hope for the future. 6 months later, the reforms were in place. Body cameras were mandatory. The early warning system was working. Several other problematic officers had been identified and were under review. Traffic stop data was being analyzed and published quarterly. The numbers were already improving. Officer Martinez had been promoted to sergeant. She was leading training sessions on bias and proper policing. Other officers who had stayed silent about misconduct were coming forward. Amara continued her work as commissioner. She reviewed complaints. She conducted investigations. She pushed for more reforms. The work was hard. There was still resistance, but progress was happening. One evening, Amara drove through Riverside Heights again, the same streets where Officer Hutchins had pulled her over. She drove her Bentley with confidence. No red and blue lights flashed behind her. No officer questioned her right to be there. She thought about that night 6 months ago. The fear, the humiliation, the anger, but she also thought about what had come from it. Real change, actual accountability, a system that was slowly getting better. Her phone rang. It was a victim of police misconduct asking for help. Amara pulled over to take the call. This was her purpose now, to be a voice for people who had been silenced, to hold power accountable, to make sure that what happened to her would happen to fewer people in the future. She was not naive. She knew racism would not end with one terminated officer. She knew there was still so much work to do. But she also knew that change was possible. Justice was possible. Progress was possible. As she drove home that evening, Amara felt something she had not felt in a long time while driving through that neighborhood. She felt hope.